Hi, everyone. I'm Jennie Young on TalksShopLive, and I'm here to talk about my new book, Burn the Haystack, Decode Dating, Torch the Duds, and Make Room for Men Who Matter. I'm here mostly to talk with you and take your questions tonight. There's also an opportunity to get autographed copies of the book. If you are watching on TalkShopLive, click the shop for links to order. And if you are watching on YouTube, click the link in the description. And I see some comments coming in already, which is great. I am going to make this a little bit bigger for myself here. I imagine if you're here right now, you're probably already maybe a little bit familiar with Burn the Haystack. So I'm hesitant to read the introduction because I think many of you might know it. But if if you have questions or if it's totally new to you, please feel free to put those questions in the chat as well, and we can do that. But just a brief overview. This book is the feminist correction on the dating apps that we've needed for a long time. It cuts through the nonsense. It's protective of your time and your energy and your safety and your mental health, and helps streamline the search for that needle in the haystack that everyone is looking for. So, all right, there's a bunch of questions. So I'm going to start here. Trisha, hi Trisha. She says, I like how you use a strict application of block to burn when it comes to dating, and the success stories you've shared really back that up. But what about applying it to everyday life, like friends and family? So I get a lot of comments about this. In particular, it seems like we've heard a lot of stories in the Facebook group about fathers getting blocked, which is really sad. I mean, not sad that women are doing that. That might be the best decision, but it's sad that it's gotten that bad in so many cases. My personal belief is that people don't block their family members unless it's really, really, really toxic and unhealthy for everyone. So I'm here more to provide sort of the analysis and the tools and the critical thought processes surrounding block to burn. And then I trust women and everyone to make those decisions for themselves about, who needs to be blocked. Um, okay, I'm looking at the next. Please read the intro. I am new here. Okay, Sam, I'm going to read a little bit of the intro, not the whole intro, but I'll read a little bit of it, which is probably a good idea. Okay, here we go. When I first got on the dating app, several years post divorce and well into middle age, I was horrified. Night after night, I grew more demoralized, flipping through my matches and seeing all the cliched nonsense I hadn't really believed was real prior to experiencing it myself. Fish pics and leering bathroom mirror selfies, and married men who wanted to ethically explore. Was this really all there was? I wanted to have an actual partner, not just to be someone's partner in crime from the backseat of his Harley so we could keep it casual and see what happens. Still, though, there had to be a few out there, right? There had to be a few decent, desirable, monogamous men who wanted the same things I did and who wanted them with a woman in their own age group. I was convinced I was missing something about how to make these apps work in my favor. None of the advice I read online made any difference in helping me find decent dates, let alone a suitable partner. The few dates I did go on ranged from boring to annoying to bizarre. One guy showed up for our a coffee date that he scheduled, wearing swim trunks and a stained tank style undershirt, the kind those of us who grew up in the 80s horrifyingly called a wife beater, snugly tucked into the waistband of his swim trunks. I forced myself to stay for 40 minutes, the entirety of which was spent listening to musing about his son's heroin addiction. Another man lectured me for 90 minutes straight about the merits of his pet corn snake and the band Tool. I would set up dating apps and then rage quit them, and I did this more times than I can remember. And the more women I talked to, the more I realized how common this experience is. I call it the dating app cycle of doom, and this is what it looks like. You decide you're going to give dating apps a try. So you download a couple of them and you spend a ton of time setting up a killer profile with thoughtfully curated photos and insightful bio text and engaging responses to prompts. And then maybe a week or a month or 6 months down the road, you feel so frustrated and demoralized and depressed that you shut down all your apps, swear off the mission forever, and decide you'd rather die alone. And then 3 months later, you do it all over again. I decided there had to be a way out of this horrible vortex. There had to be a way to online date and live an enjoyable life simultaneously, regardless of what was happening on the apps. Late one night, a few weeks into one of my doom cycles, bleary eyed from scrolling and swiping, I asked Google, "How do you find a needle in a haystack?" I was really just fooling around, but when I saw the answer, I got chills. The answer, the way you find an actual needle in an actual haystack, is to burn the haystack to the ground. What you'll be left with are the needles because metal doesn't burn. So I'm going to summarize a little bit here. I am a professor of rhetoric with a specialization in critical discourse analysis, which is just a fancy academic term for reading between the lines. And I decided to bring my academic expertise to my personal mission and also turn it into a public scholarship project. And the method sort of inverts everything women are told about using the dating apps, which is to grant people grace and give everyone a chance and give everyone the benefit of the doubt and go out with as many men as you can because it's a numbers game. And the more people you meet, the better the chances are that you'll find a partner. That is all terrible advice. You should give almost no one a chance. This method focuses on ruling men out, on burning the haystack, rather than picking through the haystack to find a needle. So I hope that's a good overview. The upshot is that it's working really well. It went viral online, and the private public scholarship group now has a little over 270,000 women in it practicing the method, and we've success stories are stacking up, and they're fun to read, but and gratifying. But more importantly, is what women are reporting about how this method is empowering them and making them feel better and keeping them safe. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm going to look at some more questions now. Okay, I'm looking at Diane's question. What's the best dating app for haystackers for free and also a paid one? Also, for your second book, please add a chapter about what it's like to date as a neurodivergent person. And also she's referencing limerence. Those are great ideas, and I am noting them. In answer to the dating app question, all the dating apps are terrible. I would be lying if I said there was a good one out there that's doing anything right. There's not. They're commodified, they're capitalistic, they are run by greedy corporations that are literally making money off of trading in human bodies. And I think we should be honest about that. That said, I'm a pragmatist, I'm a realist, and that is where people are meeting. It's still where the vast majority of new relationships are starting. The apps are gaming everyone. I'm suggesting we game them right back and figure out how to make them work in a way that serves us rather than the wallets and the corporations that are running them. My next response might seem a little counterintuitive to what I just said. I actually think it's worth it to pay for a dating app. I think you get a better experience. I think the algorithms work slightly better for you. I think you'll be taken more seriously. I don't ever suggest anybody be on more than one app at a time. I think that's like, it's too much to manage. But I think paying for one app at a time is not only doable for most people financially, and honestly, if it's not, there might be other things, right, that should be focused on before dating. And I don't mean that coming from a place of judgment. I'm just saying, like, dating is a life activity that usually does require some amount of financial input, regardless of gender. So I think getting in a good solid place before you date is a good idea, but I do think you have a better experience on the apps if you're paying for one. All right. How do I get better at recognizing the patterns? It makes so much sense when you explain them, but I still don't always see them. This is a great question. Okay. So I'm a long term teacher. Before I was doing any of this, even before I was a college professor, I was a high school teacher. There's two things that are required for any learning situation. The first is repeated exposure to content. Okay, so the content here is these rhetorical patterns. There's 33 of them in the book with tons of real life examples, like grammatical errors and everything intact. We kept them exactly the way we found them in real life because that's more instructive. So repeated exposure matters. You're not going to, necessarily internalize something the first time or the second time or the third time you see it, but over time you will. The second requirement for learning to occur, and especially in like sort of deep and rich ways that stick with you and that you can feel confident about, is to learn in a community of love and support. There's no way around that. If you think back to the teachers from whom you learned the most, they're also the teachers you loved the most. Like that's just how that works. We've created that in Burned Haystack. And I say we because I'm not taking credit for that. This is an amazing community of women and non-binary people on Facebook. It's open to everybody on all the other platforms. And and it's free. It's all the communities are completely free. I put everything in front of the paywall on Substack. This was one of the foundational principles of Burned Haystack as a public scholarship initiative, which is that it had to be totally accessible to everyone, and that means financially accessible. So if you want to learn, just come and listen. You'll be supported and you'll learn and you'll see those patterns over and over again. Allison says, "Who designed the cover? I love how bright it is." The graphic designers at HarperCollins designed this, and I love it too. Thank you. This was actually what you're seeing right here. I'm sorry, my camera is reversing the image, but only on one platform. I'm looking at multiple screens right now, in case that's not obvious. This is really stretching my meager technological abilities, and it's very confusing to me. Anyway, this is pretty much exactly how the first iteration of this cover looked. I think this text was a slightly different color, and I asked to change it to this. It's blue because I love blue. But yeah, thank you. Dr. Young, can you please verbally remind people who are watching on Instagram to go to your link in bio to order their signed copy? People on Instagram, please go to, I'm not, this might have come from, yeah, that came from TalksShopLive. I wasn't supposed to read that out loud. But it's probably a good tip. If you're on Instagram, link in bio. That's where you can order the signed copy. I'll repeat the other ones because I know I said that right at the beginning. If you're on TalkShopLive, click the shop button. If you're on YouTube, click the link in the description. Okay, Gina is asking, how can people rebuild confidence after a string of bad dating experiences? This is a complicated answer, but I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I think that confidence is overrated all the time, not just in this particular application. And here's why. What does confidence mean? Confidence is a feeling. I think competence is crucial. So stop worrying about confidence. Stop worrying about self-esteem. Stop worrying about, like, do I feel good about myself? I can tell you when I went on the dating apps, I did not have any confidence. I was not optimistic. I did not have a good attitude at all. I definitely had a scarcity mindset. And let me go off on a tangent here for a second, because women are constantly accused of having a scarcity mindset as though that's like a mood problem with women. When women have a scarcity mindset, they are looking at the reality in front of them with their eyes and describing it accurately. That's not a mood problem. That's not a feeling. That's an ability to dwell in reality, which is actually really important on the dating apps. So don't worry about having confidence. The way I approached that is I had no confidence. I felt competent in this method and I believed in the method theoretically. And I just decided to put all stock and faith in that. and I worked the method and I didn't worry about how I felt. So I don't know. I think that's probably not, maybe no psychologist would sanction that advice, but it's my advice. Um, Dana is asking, how long does it take for feelings to develop with a needle? I think that is, I think that varies a lot. I definitely don't think it needs to be on the first date or the second date or the third date or the fourth date or the fifth date or the 10th date. What we keep hearing, what the burned haystack success stories share a lot of commonalities. And one thing I do as a like a rhetorical theorist is I chart and I code those commonalities, because this whole method is about patterns, recognition, pattern identification. So what's really important to me is not that like the outlier cases, but what women tell me over and over and over again. And what women keep telling me over and over and over again is, I didn't feel any chemistry on the first date, but I felt safe and I liked him and I thought he was a nice person and he seemed trustworthy and he seemed like a person of good character. So I kept meeting him, and over time those feelings developed. And then I got an email right before I started all this up tonight, and it was a marriage notice from a woman who met her needle in fall of 24 using burn haystack, and they just got married. Diane is saying, anyone notice the witch's broom behind me? Yeah, so visual rhetoric is a thing, and sometimes it's intentional. All right, let's keep going here. Have there been experiences with non-needles? This is Susan's question. Have there been any experiences with non-needles using your method to get in the good graces of women? Okay, so I think the question here is, are men learning burned haystack in order to manipulate women? Um, the the honest answer to that is, I do not know. I haven't heard of it happening. Here's why I'm not super concerned about it. One of the primary problems that women encounter in dating app life is that men won't read their profiles, and their profiles are like 200 to 400 words long. So am I worried that they're going to do a deep dive on nearly, I don't know how many pages my book is, nearly 300 pages of feminist critical discourse analysis and rhetorical theory? I'm actually not that worried about that. For one thing, there's way easier ways for men to get that information. That the stuff I'm talking about is the same stuff that a lot of, really good Instagram dating coaches or psychologists or therapists are talking about. There's multiple books. Could there be true sociopaths out there who memorize burn the haystack? Sure, but like those guys, those people are going to be a problem no matter what, and they're going to find a way to cause trouble no matter where they are. Okay, I'm looking at questions again here. This is Trisha's question. Should it be just as strict, or would you recommend more flexibility? So she's referring to like, should it be as strict as what I'm saying? I'm just wondering if I'm enjoying block to burn a little too much. I'm not accepting boundary violations anymore. And then she includes, I don't know if you guys can see these comments or not, forgive me. Then she includes a laughing face and a flame emoji. So I'm going to go right into semiotics here, which is the study of signs and symbols and their associated meanings in a culture. Okay, so this is a woman saying, I don't know, I might be being too harsh. I might be enjoying something too much. And also, she's including a laughing emoji and a flame emoji, which put together is a symbol of humor, entertainment, and power. So Trisha's telling me I might be having too much fun and feeling too empowered and being too entertained. Okay, if that's the worst thing that happens, then yes, I'll take it. Keep being harsh. I think all women should be harsh. I don't, we hear this like, women are too picky, women don't put up with enough, women won't endure enough. That's a lot of nonsense. Think of every woman you know and what she's tolerated in her life, and go back generations in your family and think about that. And then try to honestly make the argument that women are too picky and don't tolerate enough. All right. Hey, this is Bobby. What inspired you to write Burn the Haystack? And what does that title really mean? I think I might have answered that already. I definitely answered the title part, and I answered sort of like my process, but I, rem- I remember early on feeling just so like demoralized and aggressed and like fearful, really. I mean, I would only look at my dating apps in the morning because I'd have too many nightmares if I looked at them at night. And for a long time I thought like I must be the problem here. Like apparently this is just how it works now, and I need to get on board with whatever this discourse community is. That's the term we use in rhetorical theory for, like a specific group of people having specific kinds of conversations. And I was having all these weird conversations with men that made no sense or were just really offensive or they didn't go anywhere. And I really did. I internalized all that the way I think a lot of people do. And then all of a sudden, one night, I remember thinking, if the whole problem were me, wouldn't I be encountering the problem like other places? Because, I go to work every day. I'm a full-time professor, so I was like interacting with hundreds of students on a regular basis. I had tons of colleagues, and I wasn't having a hard time talking to them or understanding them, and they weren't having a hard time understanding me. And once I kind of made that switch, I really got kind of angry. Like I got really angry about how much pain I was, how much pain and discomfort and fear and self-doubt and gaslighting that I was encountering on a daily basis on these dating apps. And I just thought, and I don't know, I don't know what I thought was going to happen. I had no plans at that point to do any of this. But I remember thinking, like, we're just not doing this anymore. This has got to end, and it needs to end now. And again, I had no conception of how that would happen. I had no social media following. Um, but I just remember thinking that really clearly. And I didn't have any confidence. Like, there was no point at which I said, I'm going to start a social media movement, and then I'm going to get an agent, and then I'm going to get a book deal, and then we're going to do this. I didn't foresee any of that. I thought best case scenario, I'll get a few women talking about this on Facebook. I'll place an academic article in some rhetorical theory journal that a few people will read, and it might be interesting academically. And that was kind of what I hoped for. But I also like knew that there was a big idea there. And so then I stopped worrying about like number one, the dating apps and how that was going. And I decided to just focus on the method and the community. And so here we are. I get a little long-winded. This is my number one student complaint, is that I go off on tangents. In fact, I was reading a student complaint recently, and it was a young man, and he wrote, in my other classes, I like to make a game of getting my professors off track, but I never have to do that in here because I know you'll do it on your own. It's totally true. Um, Okay. Was there a personal or professional moment that pushed you to develop this approach? I think I just said that. Are you planning to do a book tour also in Europe, preferably in Austria? I would love to come to Austria. Um, am in the midst of a mini book tour right now, although for a few days I'm in Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is where I live. You can go to my website for the remaining tour dates, and beyond that, I'm not sure yet. Okay, Kendall is asking, what are the most common dating duds people keep getting stuck on? This is a really interesting question. I surveyed my platform about this because the question I was trying to answer is, what is the biggest problem with men on the dating apps? Is it that they're aggressive and scary? Is it that they're liars? Or is it that they're lazy? And the reason and I thought it was gonna be aggression. I thought that was gonna be women's number one complaint, and that is a serious problem. But the number one complaint was laziness, like intellectual and emotional laziness, like inability to or unwillingness. It's unwillingness, it's not inability. It's unwillingness to read a woman's profile, to engage in a conversation, that doesn't end up in bed that night. So I think that those are probably the biggest complaints, but I would say those are the three big ones: laziness, deception, and aggression. Okay, I'm reading. Okay, this is from Michael, and so Michael, first of all, I apologize. My platform is primarily women. I wrote the book for women. Um, I'm meeting more and more men at book tour events who are coming with the women they met using that the women were using Burn Haystack and they met these guys. But then these men keep showing up at events and like they're clearly delightful people. So here's the thing I want to say to men: this method helps good guys. Like if you're already sort of feminist and enlightened and conducting yourself in a way that is, kind and respectful and generative of good things, this method bumps you to the top. So, okay, Michael says, my friend Karen turned me onto your book, which I've already listened to. Burned Haystack has changed my life. She calls me a needle, just not her needle. Any advice for those true needles out there? So here's the thing: true needles can just be yourself. Like that's really all you need to do. And I don't know how to say it more simply than that, and I don't think there's a way to make it more complex than that that's actually helpful, because I think a lot of like online dating content for men, it's telling men how to perform to get women, and that is, I mean, that's obviously really manipulative and objectifying where women are concerned, but that's not even helpful to men because that's not sustainable. That doesn't serve anyone over the long term. So I want everyone to stop, seriously, everyone of all genders, to stop being concerned about performing well on the dating apps and instead just learn how to engage with your life and your communities and your people and your interests in ways that sort of naturally forge those human connections. So I'm sorry that you are not her needle, but the fact that she's telling you your needle is a huge compliment. You should take it that way. Um, okay. Hey, why do so many people ignore red flags even when they see them? I think there's a lot of answers to this. One answer, and it's the saddest one, is human kindness. As human beings, we're wired to see potential. I mean, that's a quality and a trait that allows us to be parents and teachers and caregivers and friends. It's to give people second chances, to try to see, the good rather than the bad. So that's one reason. Um, the other reason is that you've got a bunch of online dating coaches telling you to grant people grace and to override your instincts and to, assume that, oh, he didn't really mean it that way. It sounded terrible, but it wasn't really terrible. No, it was terrible. It was terrible. Just this, I think one thing this community does is, and it's done this for me too, is when you spend time in it, or when you spend time reading this book, um, it reinforces what you already know. It, as much as we're wired to give people the benefit of the doubt and to give them second chances and to see potential, we are also wired on a deep, like reptilian level to recognize danger. And that's literally what a red flag is. It's a danger signal. And one thing that I want this book to do, and that people keep telling me it's doing for them, is helping them trust their own instincts again. And I think that's really important. Um, What mindset, this is Kayla's question, and I think it's another really good question. What mindset shift is most important for someone who feels stuck in dating? Um, I think, I mean, and number one, I'm hesitant to, like, I don't want to tell anybody to have a good attitude. I just kind of like gave my little spiel on that. But I think if you want to effect some kind of mindset shift, you want to reallocate the amount of your time and attention that you're spending on the dating apps. And there's the book has 10 rules of engagement, 33 rhetorical patterns, and then a whole bunch of other rhetorical strategies and tactics. But those 10 rules of engagement are for you. They're how do you conduct yourself on the apps, not to be more attractive, not to get as many matches as possible. How do you conduct yourself on the apps in a way that keeps you safe and healthy and sane and able to enjoy the rest of your life while moving the dating apps to the back burner? Paradoxically, this will make them work better for you. You'll actually, it's like it's a twofer because you'll get a better yield by investing less and fewer resources. Okay, a question from Allison. How can someone quickly identify if a relationship has real potential? Okay, so this might be a bummer of an answer, but stick with me here. We use burned haystack to rule people out, not to rule them in. You can tell either at the profile stage, in very early messaging, or on a phone call or on the first few dates, if someone is bad news. You can identify those toxic rhetorical patterns very early on. Block to burn, that's rule number 4. You can block to burn and not waste any more of your time or put yourself in any kind of bad situation with that person. You cannot rule them in at that stage. You can't rule anyone in at the very early stages because people can put on a performance for a period of time. Not and there's that 3-month rule. That varies a lot depending on how many times you see that person in those 3 months. I mean, if you see him 3 times, that's no different than 3 days. Um, so that I don't know that that's a hard and fast rule that's super useful, but you just have to give people time. And you know what, one way to do that, and again, this is why I get screamed at on Instagram for being not sex positive. um, One way to do that is to delay any kind of physical intimacy, because not not because it's right. This method is pragmatic. It's not ideological. Okay. So if I'm giving a tip, it's not because it's based in right or wrong. It's because it is rhetorically powerful for you to employ and because it benefits you. So the benefit to delaying any kind of physical interaction is that the people who are just in it to objectify you or worse are simply not going to hang around. The rhetoric operates on its own. And again, I don't say this to shame anyone, but if you want to stack the deck in your favor, if you're looking for a long-term monogamous relationship, which is what my book is geared toward. People are using it for all different kinds of relationship structures now. We've had some really interesting success stories from polyamorous group members, but like my intention was to make it work for women trying to find long-term monogamous partners, because that's the hardest thing to find on the app. Okay, Priya or Priya, I'm not sure if I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. She writes, "Hi, Jenny. So many women are saying that when it comes to domestic relational labor, things often start off fine, but then devolve. Other than letting them plan the first date, any other tips? Thanks." Um, yeah, so I know this is a problem, and planning the first date is a good, like, real early indicator that someone is willing to share in that kind of labor. But there's a lot of people out there who will plan the first date and then do nothing beyond that. Just watch really closely and be willing to be honest with yourself. Watch for the little things. And I'm trying to think of an example. If you have, like, let's use a colleague example here. There's frequently a problem at work, any kind of workplaces, that whenever there's like a birthday party or a retirement party, the women are doing all the planning, all the baking, all the decorating, whatever needs to be done. That's like one little sort of, I don't know, rhetorical artifact, like to see how a man is conducting himself within those kind of situations. Like, is he helping? Is he, you know, is he baking something and bringing it to work, or is he like, I'll get the napkins, So again, that's not the greatest example, but off the top of my head, that's like something I can think of. But watch for those real little things. But then you also have to have sort of the discipline and the courage to not disregard them when those signs don't look so good. And I know that's hard. Um, okay. Okay. Monica says, I burned the haystack except for two people with whom I wasn't matched. Should I take a break, remove my profile, and upload a new one, or another idea? Okay, so this answer too is going to be a bummer, but I think in the end it's a time saver. My process when I did use the dating apps, um, was to do one app for 1 month and then completely be done with that app and build a whole new profile on another app. And I don't mean just like take a break or pause it and reopen it. Algorithmically, you're going to get way more matches at the very beginning. So that is a drag because it takes time. And I've heard people doing like a combination where they're like, all right, well, I keep Hinge going all the time, like just in the background. And if it yields anything, it does. But then I experiment, with one other app at a time. There's various ways to do that. But I think that for right now, that's kind of an inescapable reality of how the apps work. Diana is asking, anything you had to leave out of the book? Um, we had to leave a lot of success stories out of the book, which is a good news, bad news scenario, right? Like, it's great that we had so many success stories so early in this project that we couldn't include most of them. So if you're not familiar with the book, a lot of it is, I mean, all the rules are in there with descriptions, all the rhetorical patterns with examples, real life examples. There's some rhetorical theory in there so that you can understand like this methodology that I'm using and why it's effective. It's written in a way that is easy to understand. That was the one chapter I had to do a lot of rewriting on. And I kind of knew that was coming. And the editorial team at HarperCollins, they're like both genius and super amazing human beings. And like they had to tell me to tone down the academia a little bit, which I did. So now it's readable. So it's a lot of heavy stuff like in this book, right? Interspersed throughout the book, there are humor breaks. I write a lot of humor. If you're familiar with McSweeney's, I've got a lot of content on that site and a bunch of other sites. So it's like it's important to me. I think that incorporating humor is really necessary for anyone on a dating app just to survive it. I think that the humor component has been a big part of the community draw. I get a lot of notes that say I'm not even dating anymore, or I'm already married, or I don't ever want to date, but like this group is hilarious. So the community is funny. So there's humor breaks throughout, and then there's success stories throughout. But we did have to leave a lot of them out because we had too many. Lisa is asking, I'm just beginning the book. Is there a section on making your own profile? Any tips? Yes, there is a whole chapter on that. So what I did, because I think, I could spout advice, but as an academic, I feel compelled to provide evidence and research. So what I did was solicit dating app profiles that worked. So community members sent me their profiles that they were using when they met their long-term partners, like people they were in happy, solid relationships with. I selected 5 of them or maybe 6, I can't remember, for the book that I thought were a good representation. They're all published in the book with image descriptions. We didn't put anybody's actual pictures in there, and we didn't reveal people's names, but the language is in there. I then analyze why those profiles worked. And I then draw commonalities. Again, this sort of like patterning effect where I'm able to say, regardless of like what your situation is, like who you're looking for or any, your demographics or whatever, these are kind of like what I would call rhetorical moves. These are the rhetorical moves made in this profile that seem to work over and over again. So that's in there. Um, Okay, Vicky is asking, the beginning of this is a little bit of a repetition, but I'm going to read her question. I'm afraid that male dating coaches and pickup artist style coaches will read your book and create ways to get around the method. What is your take on this? So I partly answered that, but I didn't include the funny part, which is that people have been sending me, so men are bragging on their various men's forums about how they're gaming Burned Haystack, and then they provide their profiles, and then women send me the profiles, and then we all laugh and laugh and laugh because nobody using Burned Haystack would click on these guys' profiles. And they're specifically advertising this as like, hey, I know Burned Haystack. And their profiles are a disaster. They're violating rhetorical patterns left and right. So I'm not super concerned about that. But again, there are psychopaths out there. I can't account for that. And unfortunately can't fix it. Nobody can. I still think that Burned Haystack is your best bet for being safe on the dating apps out of anything. Women talk about running background checks. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Running background checks is fine, but most dangerous people don't have a criminal record. So those kind of things are giving people false security and, maybe enabling them to land in bad situations. I have far more faith in rhetoric and rhetorical analysis and critical discourse analysis than I do in running background checks or internet snooping, which I did constantly. Everybody does it. I don't think you shouldn't do it, but I think the rhetoric is the superpower. Vicky is also asking, I have to keep my eye on time here. I'm supposed to remind everybody, Talk Shop Live, click the shop button. I was supposed to do this every 10 minutes, which I have failed to do. I'm really bad at book promotion, so I'm lucky that they invited me on this show. If you're on Instagram, comment the word shop for links to order. If you're on YouTube, click the link in the description. I had to write that for myself on a piece of paper, or I knew it wasn't going to happen. Will the method still work in 5 years' time? I don't know. I believe the rhetorical analysis will still be valid. For one thing, people are applying Burned Haystack methodology outside the dating apps right now. It's being used extensively in therapeutic and clinical settings for domestic violence abuse recovery and prevention. It's being used with religious abuse recovery. People are using it in the workplace. Therapists are using it with neurodivergent people because the rhetorical patterns are a more concrete way to sort of gauge someone's character than just going on like feeling a vibe. That doesn't always work for people who have diagnoses of neurodivergence. So I don't know, because I don't know what's going to happen with dating, because nobody does. I don't think the apps are going anywhere, and I do think the rhetoric will hold up. The toxic patterns that I identify in Burned Haystack, we've gone back and identified them in classic literature from like the 1800s, in every single rom-com from the 80s. Like, problematic people are kind of problematic in the same way. That's a famous line from a book that now I can't remember. Something about happy families being happy in the same way and unhappy families being unhappy in their own ways. Okay, Kimberly is saying, I love your method and it's very empowering, but ever since I've started using it, I think Bumble's algorithm is punishing me for blocking by sending me the worst profiles. Am I wrong? I don't know. I didn't feel that I was getting that effect. I mean, it could just be that the more people you block, the fewer people there are. And that's a reality of Burned Haystack. Like, you will meet fewer people. You'll go out on fewer dates, but the people you do meet will be much better people, and the dates will be a lot more enjoyable. But you may have to sit it out through kind of like, through dry periods. If your goal is to meet as many people as possible, as many matches as possible, go out on as many dates as possible, then like don't use Bird Haystack. You'll be super unhappy. Um, there's a lot of articles out there and dating coaches claiming that they know how the algorithms work, and that they'll tell you. Nobody knows how the dating algorithms work because the dating app companies have never revealed that information. So we can speculate, we can test, but I don't know. I don't think that's happening, but I don't know. This community and this method is big enough now that the dating apps are paying attention to that. They know what's happening. I know this because they've reached out to me. They don't want to actually change anything, but they know it's happening. So I don't know. We may have to tweak the method. Okay, Tammy and we're 45 minutes in now. I was told to go 45 minutes to an hour. So if you have to go, thank you for coming. If you're still here, thank you for staying. I think my inclination here is to keep answering questions until I'm either out of questions or until we hit an hour, because I don't want to be presumptuous about how much time you have to spend doing this tonight. Tammy is asking, is there a way to recognize in general if someone is inauthentic? So many times in my dating history, I have found men misrepresenting themselves. They lie about so many things. So yes and no. I mean, forensic linguistics is a branch of linguistic study. I've taught it. It's fascinating. The government uses it in various capacities in Homeland Security. It hinges on grammar. I include a little bit of that in the book. There are also others who say it's a pseudoscience, you can't trust it. I think somewhere in between is probably the truth to that. But I do think there are ways to read for deception. Some of them get very technical. First person pronoun deletion is sometimes a sign of deception. So if I'm telling you about my day and I say, I got up, I had a cup of coffee, I went for a run, I got in my car to drive to campus, suddenly had to slam on my brakes, saw an elephant in the middle of the road, got out of my car, fought the elephant. I don't know if you noticed this, but I stopped using personal pronouns at the point I turned my story into this wild lie. That only holds up, though, if it's a person who consistently uses personal pronouns and then drops them at a point in the story, in what they call the narrative. That's the tell. So you have to understand someone's linguistic usage over time. Relative pronouns get really important. If I'm holding a pencil, I say this pencil. If I throw this pencil across the room and point at it, I say that pencil. This being a near pronoun, that being a distanced pronoun. The best example of this in contemporary life is when Bill Clinton famously said, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I talked to the Secret Service agent who was standing next to him when he said that. And I said, did you know he was lying? And he said, not until that point. And then when he used the word that, I knew. So these are really interesting areas of study. They are theoretical. I get asked all the time, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Where's the data? That's not how this kind of research works. It's just not. I'm sorry. It's grounded theory. It's applied inductively rather than deductively. We may have quantitative data on all of this at some point. Right now, we're 3 years into a free, openly accessible public scholarship project. And we have a whole bunch of women's narratives saying it works and that it's protective. And I believe them. That was a long-winded answer, but are there ways to know if people are lying? Yes. Are they foolproof? No, I'm sorry. April is saying, After meeting a potential needle, at what point do you stop looking for rhetorical patterns? Ever? Question mark. People ask me this all the time. In fact, my own brother, I was in Cleveland, Ohio for a book event last week, and my brother came and he walked out and was like, I'm just basically done talking to you anymore because he's afraid I'm going to analyze everything he says, but he's a total needle. So I wouldn't do that. Um, yeah, at the point you feel comfortable with someone, you'll naturally stop analyzing them for rhetorical patterns, I think. I mean, that's what happens to me. I don't analyze my family and friends or my partner for rhetorical patterns. These are people I know very well. I mean, and they might have a bad day, and that's fine. Like we all have bad days, but none of them would go on a dating app and act like a maniac. That's just the truth. Okay. Um, Helena is asking, once I matched with someone on the apps, what next? I feel lost at this stage. Okay, one of the things in the book, and I don't know, I'm probably not going to flip right to it, but I'm going to try here. We have the what I call the messaging hierarchy, and it's if you have the book, you'll find it. It's a big triangular diagram that it's almost like a choose your own adventure for dating app messages, where it's like if they say this, keep going. If they do this, block to burn, you're done. And it's kind of like a guide, but what you should be able to do is have a natural conversation the way you'd have a conversation with anyone. And if you can't, then that's not a good match anyway. You don't even really need to know why. And it might not be that there's anything wrong with the other person. You might just not have anything in common, or maybe you just don't like talking to them, or they don't like talking to you, or whatever it is. But again, try not to make the dating apps like this whole other sort of domain or dimension of life, because it shouldn't be. Like a good dating app interaction will function exactly like a good human interaction in any other aspect of life. Okay, Paula is asking, do you recommend to read the book and learn the technique at the same time as using the app, or first dedicate some time to learning the techniques? I think this is a comfort level question, and I think either works. I know for a fact, like, I was initially on the apps when I was developing the method. Then I took 2 years off because I was busy like moderating the communities and writing the book, and really being like intensely focused on developing and studying the method. So then when I, went in the 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 last time, I had done just a lot of study, but I think being there in real time does it. I mean, it's practice too, right? Like you don't have to go out with anybody. You don't even have to talk to anybody. It does help to give yourself like analytical artifacts to practice with. So, but again, I think some people are like, nope, I need to, and this is more how I am naturally. I'd be the type who's like, no, I'm going to read all the books, all the articles, learn all the methods. I'm going to understand all the rhetoric and all the theory, and then I'll get on the dating apps. And that might be better for some people. So I think that would work too. Veronica, I'm so glad I saw this comment. She is saying, how can I reach out to women's shelters and domestic violence recovery centers regarding this book? Should I just email and say, I found a book that's helpful and want to donate a few? I bought 10 and want to share them. Wow. First of all, thank you, Veronica, for doing that. I did the same thing. So I think that's a perfectly fine thing to do. And I hope that they will listen. If you do that, please feel free to like loop me in. So my website is jennieyoung.com, JENNIEYOUNG.com. There's a form there that they can contact me at. If for some reason, they feel they want to talk to me, I'm happy. Obviously, I'm happy to weigh in on that and support that. My next move here, and I've got to get through the book tour and some other like things I need to do in my life in the next few weeks here, but I am working on developing a curriculum that can be used in these facilities based on the methodology in here, but that could be taught alongside the book. That is something that I want to develop in consultation with mental health experts and people working in that field once I get their stamp of approval, and I don't know how long it's going to take to do that, I'm very comfortable writing curriculum. I do it all the time. I just don't want to overstep bounds, or I want to stay in my line academically. But once that's ready to go, my intention is to make it as widely accessible as possible to those kind of facilities and those kind of programs. So at that point, Veronica, you could contact me, and I could work with you to talk to these people, or you could connect me to them directly. But um, it's a really important. It's not only really important, but it seems like the obvious thing for me to do next. Rachel is asking, can you tell us what you think of the bachelor method in dating? How might some oh, you on the show. I have to admit I don't really watch the show. So I'm sorry. I have to be honest and say I don't have an answer to that. Um Kathleen says, and I think I'm going to end on this one because it's a book recommendation and I love book recommendations. Kathleen C says, have you read Native Tongue by Suzette Hayden Elgin, Elgin? And then she says, that's what you're doing. I have not read it, but I'm going to read it now. So thank you for that recommendation. And we're about out of time. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your questions. I'm sure there are questions I didn't get to. As I'm finishing here, I'm supposed to remind again of all the places to buy the book, which I already did. I'm not going to do it again. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your questions, and have a good rest of your night.